We're in lovely Interaction offices on a beautiful summer day, and we've got quite a few people online. I think last time I looked it was 70-something, 79 out of 101 or so that had signed up. So we've got a lot of interest in this topic, which is wonderful. It's also a little daunting, but we'll see what we can do in an hour and a half to solve all of our open data issues. No problem at all. So welcome, welcome. I'm just going to start. I'm Janine Schooley. I'm Senior Vice President for Programs at Project Concern International. I'm based in our San Diego office. And it's great to be here with you. I'm your handy-dandy facilitator for the morning. And that just means that I'm going to work hard to keep us on time, on track, on topic, in a way that's hopefully not obnoxious, but is, friendly. So we'll do that. We've got just a few objectives for the morning. Obviously, want to introduce, kind of launch officially this guide that we've put together. We'll have a presentation of its contents, what it's all about, just so you have that. It is available on our website. We'll give you all of that information as well. We have a few hard copies lying around, but mostly it's available online. We can talk about that throughout the morning. And then we want to have a forum for some questions and answers and discussion. Obviously, in an hour and a half presentation, with so much interest, we're not going to be able to do justice to that, especially with 79 plus people online also having questions. But we are very committed to taking all those questions and suggestions, whether you use purple or orange or online. We'll capture all of those. We'll cover a few of those today, but we are committed to sharing out responses to all of those questions and suggestions by some point in time, which we have yet to determine, but it will be in the not too distant future. And we'll figure out how to do that because we're very aware of the short time that we have together and how much interest and engagement we need to have around this topic. So we're going to present the guide with Kim Murphy, who's our lead author, really the sort of mover and shaker of this guide is going to be presenting. We have a panel of experts. I always hate to use that term. Sometimes, we are experts in our own way, but it sort of sets up certain expectations that, but anyway, we have a great panel from PCI staff, Interaction, and USAID to give different perspectives. I'll be just informally asking questions. Hopefully we'll have a really rich conversation, and we'll open it up to all of you, and including those of you that are online for a few questions and answers. We'll see how it goes. And then just close out hopefully around 11:30. We have a few people that need to rush off to BWI, but we'll try to end around or soon after 11:30. So does that sound like a plan? Okay, great. So because time is short, and without further ado, I'm really, really happy to introduce my boss, our new CEO at PCI. She's based here in DC, Clara Hessler-Radalet, and she'll, I'm sure, wow and wow us with her warm welcome. So go ahead, Clara, come on up. Oh, before you do that, I did want to say one thing. The questions and answers and conversation we'll have later, but please capture as you go along through the morning. We're trying to have the questions on purple and suggestions on orange just to help us manage this quickly. Please write legibly and large so that we can not waste time trying to figure out what you're trying to ask, but and we'll try to get to all of those pertinent questions today and then over time. Sorry, Trace.
That's great. I don't know about wow and thou, but anyway, good morning, everyone. I'm Clara Hessler-Radalet. Sadly, I have to hop on a plane. Actually, I'm going to vacation, so it's not that sad. I wanted to be here with you today, and I wish I could stick around for the whole event, but I can't. But I wanted to be here for the launch because I think this is really important. I'm going to start with a bunch of thank yous. And first of all, I want to thank Janine and the rest of the PCI team, Clara, and Caroline, and I really want to thank Kim Murphy, our amazing consultant. I want to recognize USAID for the support of this guide. It wouldn't have happened without you, and particularly Roy Miller, who been our patron and is going to be on the panel today. I want to thank Interaction for hosting this event, and especially Benjamin Bester for all of your help in getting this organized today. And I want to thank Alicia, Phillips, Mandaville for joining our panel today. It is impossible to underestimate the importance of data in our world today. Every program is being asked to justify itself, and we need data to be able to do that. In addition, we know that data can help us to improve the quality of our interventions, and that's so important to us as development practitioners. When combined, powerful qualitative and quantitative data can literally change the course of history, and I wanted to give you an example of that. Long before Jon Snow made television history by being the king of the North, there was another Jon Snow who lived in London in the mid-1800s. And he was a physician, and there was a raging cholera epidemic at the time. Thousands and thousands of people were dying. And the prevailing belief at that time was that the miasma that surrounded London was responsible for the epidemic. So it was London at that time, and many cities around the world, was a foul, stinking place. And people believed that the cloud of the stench was what was responsible for it. And so they would close their families in their homes in a way to try to escape this cloud of smell, basically. But Jon Snow had another theory. He believed that it was waterborne. But no one believed him, and he didn't have the data to back it up. So he underwent very rigorous data to track every single case of cholera and plot it on a map. And it was that thoughtful research, and especially his map, that eventually led him to the Broad Street well, where he removed the handle and stopped the cholera epidemic. He also, at the same time, launched the fields of epidemiology and public health. So it was a tremendous piece of work, but it was his thoughtful research, his really careful analysis, and especially his communication of the data that enabled the cholera epidemic to end. He saved thousands of lives, but it really changed the field of medicine and public health at the same time. So data is incredibly powerful. As you know, or maybe you don't know, I held leadership positions at Peace Corps for 7 years. I was the deputy director and I was the director. And during that time, I literally made hundreds and hundreds of visits to stakeholders to talk about the importance of our program. And I had to use data to support my argument. And I remember going up on the hill, and I met with a famous longtime senator who told me this, just with this quote. He said, "You have hard numbers supporting your work. You'll win our minds. If you have powerful stories, you win our hearts. We need both." This quote speaks powerfully to the importance of qualitative and quantitative data, and sharing it and using it and having it open and transparent so that we can really prove the importance of the work that we do, which has never been more important than right now, making that case. You know, data has never been more important to our work as implementers of good public health and good development practice. And shared and transparent data is particularly important now because it builds trust. And trust is in dangerously short supply these days, I would say. So having transparent data that people can get their hands on and that they can validate for themselves is so critical to our efforts. So this guide is going to be so important to all of us, and I'm really grateful to all of you who are practitioners of data, who are such important players in making sure that we can tell our case. You're going to hear a lot about the guide in a moment, so I'm not going to go into what it's all about, but I would say that it is designed to be user-friendly. It's going to evolve over time with the feedback and input of all of you. And I want to say that PCI is so grateful to have been in a leadership role in the development of this guide, and I think we all are going to benefit as we use this guide to provide feedback and additional input that will help us to make an even better tool that will guide our whole field into the future. So I wish you the best today as you launch this important guide, and thank you all for your work. Your work is so important. It's such a privilege to work with you.
Thank you, Carrie, and let's give Carrie a great vacation send-off. We're all envious.
Dressed up for you today.
She's going to change into her sweats for the flight. All right, thank you, Carrie, so much. Again, and I don't know what I'm clicking at here. We've struggled with a bit. We've got the maximum number of 101. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody online. We're really excited to have you join us. You've dwarfed us in size, but we're mighty over here as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kim Murphy, who will give us a rundown on the guide. And Kim, good luck with the pointer, because I'm
challenged that way too. Oh,
quicker.
Wow, look at how many people. This is really exciting. I'm really happy all of you are here in the room and online. I'm Kim Murphy. I am the writer of the guide. I was hired. I'm an independent consultant, so I was hired by PCI to develop this with their team. So PCI developed the guide and took the lead, but it was made possible by a grant from TOPS. The USAID's Technical and Operational Performance Support Program. And it was created with a community of practice with Interaction and International Rescue Committee and Oxfam and USAID. So there were a lot of voices involved. We did a lot of research and interviews and kind of working sessions together. So the thing about open data, I want to kind of start with a definition of how we approach the open data and quality data management practices. So in our talks with Roy, who is from USAID, the tenets of open data are that it's made public, made available to the public, and it's structured in a way that it is usable and searchable, can be found by users in the public. And quality data management practices enable an organization to use their data and leverage it and make it powerful, like how Carrie was talking about. I mean, that's kind of a critical component. And when you're able to leverage your data, then you can do quality improvement and impact management and support innovation. It can help you strategically as an organization, and it can help you achieve really critical goals. So that's kind of the foundation. People getting kicked out. So I wanted to kind of go over USAID's perspective of what makes for good open data and when data is useful. Data is most useful when it's consistent, when it's standardized and can be compared. Yes. And when there's a relationship, right? When it's related, when that relationship is clear to the people who are looking at the data, where there are unique and consistent IDs that can connect it together. So I'm not going to keep clicking. Data is also most usable when it's scaled. So when you can look across multiple countries, it carries more weight than if you're looking at a kind of a smaller set. And when it's unique, data is most valuable, most usable when it's unique, when it's rare, when it's difficult or impossible to get that data any other way. And it needs to be documented. So this is kind of the context information that brings it to life, that human story even that Carrie was talking about, that collects and adds to its meaning and puts it into context. It needs to be ideally timely. Recent old data doesn't have as much value as new data. And finally, it needs to be easily accessible, which is one of the main things that we're talking about in terms of open data here. Ideally, something that's easy to use for the user, it's easy the interface is easy, and to download and make it most useful. Okay, so you might have all heard about the Data Development Library, the Development Data Library, the DDL. That is what USAID has created to make all of your data open and available. And it's through the DDL that they want to share it, make it accessible, and have it be used responsibly. But getting from there, from that goal, from here to there, and making it open and usable and accessible requires a lot. It requires government organizations. It requires non-government organizations. It requires a deep understanding of the value and importance of the data that you have, and kind of holding that up and recognizing how important it is. And I think ultimately it requires a commitment to creating a vibrant open data ecosystem where it's not just about uploading your data to the data library, right? It's about bringing it to life and putting it in context and putting it there so that other people, when they look at it, they can see possibilities in it. They can understand it. The layman doesn't have to be inside your head. They can look at it and have it come to life. So when we approached this project, these concepts became very, very critical. This guide is not just about you uploading data. It grew from that initial concept. And so now the objectives for this guide are to help PCI and all of its peer organizations make their data powerful and useful, unleash the power of that data, and implement the quality data management practices that are going to enable you to do that. It's obviously also designed to help you facilitate compliance with USAID policy and to enable you to contribute to this dynamic ecosystem, this bigger picture. I should have said before I started that I'm going to kind of roll through all my slides, and then after I'm done, I'll kind of open it up to questions, and we can talk further about anything you need clarified. So in terms of the guide, it does present these best practices for data management. It presents policy compliance information, but it does not reiterate the policy. It's not pages and pages of policy. It's not even PCI's interpretation of the policy. It's more about how you can pause and step back and think about your practices within your organization and what you might need to do to be able to comply, but to implement kind of larger, stronger data management practices. It has a library of useful tools. Now, I'll get to that more in a minute. And then, of course, it also has step-by-step procedures to allow you to actually comply. It's really easy to read and user-friendly. It's not, no offense, right? It's not a government document. It is very user-friendly. And it's designed to help all the practitioners and all the stakeholders do exactly what I've been talking about, implement data management systems that will allow you to maximize your data. It's available in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. I will say, though, that the information that is uploaded to the DDL needs to be in English. All right, now we're going to talk about the guide structure. All right, there's 4 sections in the guide, plus 18 useful tools. And these tools are anything from, charts and graphics to spreadsheets and case studies and samples. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of different things. The section 1 presents this big picture of, why does data matter? Why are we even talking about this? And why are quality data management practices important? Section 2 gets deeper into, some best practices for quality data management. And this is where, as an organization, you can take that pause and really think about, like, okay, well, how do we operate? How do we want to operate? What could we change and improve? Section 3 is the step-by-step process where it actually helps you put into practice, once you've thought about things, workflows that will enable you to more easily comply and see what's coming down the road. And then the last section are other important contextual considerations, things like ethical issues and privacy issues and identifying data. That's where you'll find the tools. They're all in the back, but throughout, from the very first page of each section, it talks about which tools you're going to use in that section, but all of them appear in the back. And then there's additional tips and, acronyms and key terms and things like that. So, as Janine mentioned, the guide is going to be posted on PCI's website. It's intended to be a living document. I think we tried very hard to put a great first product out there. This is not the end-all be-all, right? Best practices change and evolve. Hopefully, you all are going to provide input that is going to continually improve this document. This is just a first step, and we very much want this community of practice, which includes all of you, to keep working together to improve this whole continuum of quality data management and complying with it. So we'll continue to update the draft as necessary, and we do welcome any feedback. And I guess we'll talk about how we can take feedback a little bit later.
Orange cards.
Orange cards, we can take feedback. So this is, before I turn it over to Janine, I'm sure a lot of people have questions.
So have you been writing them down for Kim, or do you have some that we can capture? Or do you have some that you want to, and also online, we want to make sure that Ben is going to be curating the online questions. Other questions that you've captured already?
Yeah, but not really related. Not on the guide. That's fine. And you may not have questions until you actually sit with it and work through it and think like, okay, well, this doesn't make sense. So this is not a speak now or forever hold your peace moment.
Okay. There is a comment.
Okay.
Quality data management must also ensure ethical and human subject protection.
Yes, there's a big section about all about those types of issues, and some tools as well and checklists. So it is a big issue. I think the guide is a great start, but certainly the conversation about how you do that in the field, I think we could continue to improve those sections. Get more.
This is sort of a comment / question. I was going to push back a little bit on your idea that good data should be scalable and timely, because time series data obviously is only timely in the most recent look at it. So if we're doing looking at a baseline versus today, timeliness is sort of relative to what your analytic need would be. And then also the sort of scalability issue, that should also be driven by your analytic need rather than by what the good data is in the context of what the analysis is trying to do.
Yeah.
So specificity and context specificity would be more important if you're trying to do an in-depth kind of analysis or targeting, for example, as opposed to scalability, which would be a comparative analysis.
Yes, so good point. So those came from USAID, so not to throw it over to Roy, but I am going to throw it over to Roy. Those are really good points, but he is the kind of data.
But to open what the data needs with
regard,
good data is in the context of the analysis. Should be the number one way we should define good data.
No, I think that's a point well taken.
Did you have anything to add, Roy? Or?
I don't think we want to get into a
No.
I think the point well taken.
Yeah. Okay.
I like the point. Okay.
We do have one. It would be helpful to briefly go over the types of tools in the guide.
Yeah.
So I actually have the appendix here that I could go through. Gotta get my readers on. I'll give you just some examples of the titles of them.
So tool 1 is a policy discussion checklist. Tool 2 is a data life cycle infographic. Tool 3 is a DCC data management plan questionnaire. Go ahead. I'm on the floor.
So there's metadata code book examples and guidelines. There is a whole tool on ethics and privacy talking points. when you're talking with potential participants. There are tools about registering and submitting your data to the DDL, tracking information through the course of your project, like of where it is in terms of compliance, not necessarily with USAID, but internally, like, okay, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this, checklists like that. There's, like, as I mentioned, there's case studies information. There's budgeting tools to help you determine how much it might cost you to improve your quality data management practices, what kind of resources are involved with that, and I mean,
incorrect and correct examples.
Yeah, incorrect and correct examples of what a good upload to the DDL should look like, what it should not look like, file naming convention handouts. It's quite a swath.
Trying to be, practical. What could be helpful if you really had to try to do this, which we all do. And I'm sure we're open to, this would be the kind of suggestions would be great to get from all of you. What are other tools that would, we really need this to really make this easy? Yeah.
If you develop them too, and you think, okay, we did this, share it.
Is the DDL curated? If there's somebody in there at USAID who actually looks at what's uploaded to ensure that it meets certain standards?
Yes. It goes through a very strict vetting process before it's made open. Two or more.
What was that? 6 weeks. It takes a year.
But it can be longer, depending.
Does anyone run into a situation where the partners we have in country have, say, a policy in place where their data are not allowed to be on servers outside of that country? And I'm speaking specifically about Zambia, because we've run into that there.
So we address some of those issues, I would say, lightly, because there are so many nuances and complexities, but we do touch upon when there are some delicate issues. But you would probably also need to kind of mobilize your forces internally and potentially consult USAID in your core and bring the team in.
One of the things that I'm hoping we'll get out of today are some recommendations for, okay, what can we do next? And one of the things that would be great is if we can, as people struggle with these things and work through them, that we capture that so that we can share, sort of like a frequently asked questions or just experiences that people are having, so we don't have to reinvent wheels all the time as the wheels get invented. We're just now trying to make these things out, right? So that would be one recommendation, is to capture these experiences so that we can extrapolate to others, others and not have to suffer through it again.
As I recall, Janine, I saw something maybe a year or so ago that the data, there's now language going into cooperative agreements and contracts about the use of DDL. So I'm guessing this is that link over to that requirement.
Yeah.
Well, then you ought to say attached to that.
Well, then you ought to say that coming with very specific language about what's required and what will be required to submit and how. So definitely it's now, it's a formalized process, and that's what we'll need. Perfect. Thank you.
One of the issues that's always been unclear to me is how to deal with monitoring data. I don't think in the original USAID guidance they were very clear on that, and that is constantly being updated. It's one thing to have like a data set from a large evaluation or assessment, but the monitoring data is constantly changing. Are you supposed to upload the new data set on a quarterly basis? And is it something that really is going to be useful to, most outside researchers?
Okay, I was going to get ready. You want to go first, Ron?
Okay. There is, I believe, one of our frequently asked questions that will answer that. Maybe I should stand up.
How do people get at those FAQs?
The website is www.usaid.gov/data. You can get to the submission form. You can get to the frequently asked questions from there.
And that's the answer there.
And I believe there's an answer, but the answer is if it's monitoring data that's being submitted to the mission like the number of children who received a vitamin A capsule in the last quarter, that does not come to us. That goes to the mission. If it's generated, if you do a survey in order to get that data, that's granular raw data. That should come to us. Now, just yesterday, I was asked by a colleague in the Africa Bureau, what frequency should we report? And we generally leave that up to the partner in the COR to make a decision that makes sense. Probably annually would be sufficient for the granular data that generates the indicator that is reported in monitoring. And some of you may have heard that USAID is working on the development information solution that's going to mix all these things together, and the development data library and the development experience clearinghouse and the reporting that is done on indicators will all be in one system. Don't hold your breath.
I'm sorry, did you want to, and then Julia?
I just wanted to start by, that was one of the first questions we raised when we started reading the policy. How often are we going to be submitting data that is continuously changing? Data that we are using to produce a quarterly report, intellectual paperwork, and work for the requirements. And we brought those questions to USAID. And really the consensus is that you have to negotiate with your AOR or COR. How often? Yearly makes sense. But this continuous data that changes quarterly, you're not going to be submitting it every quarter. It will be impossible. But you want to negotiate, those are negotiations that need to take place and submit it yearly. So every one of these data sets in some ways, and that's part of the initial process, is to negotiate what, when, and how.
So we're going to move on and have more opportunity to hear from some key folks in the room. Hopefully Ben is gathering like the most fascinating and provocative questions ever from the online group. And Clara is still continuing to collect things, and hopefully we'll be able to read them. She just dropped a few. We will, I think, we'll try to use these cards as much as possible just because we find it streamlines the process. So, you've met Roy already, Roy Miller from USAID, and we're going to manage this such that he's not on the hot seat at all. This isn't all about the policy per se. It's really much more about what we need to do as a community to figure out how to be compliant and share information and all of that. And so thanks, Roy, for being here. You're a trooper. Alicia Phillips Mandaville from Interaction, who's Chief Vice President of Global Development Policy and Learning. Thank you, Alicia, so much for being here. It'd be great to get the perspective of Alicia as she works to figure out how to have these sort of community practice and sharing and learning and applied learning, more importantly. Got two colleagues of mine from PCI, all the way out from San Diego as well. We've got Clara Eder, she's our Vice President for Global Analytics, and has been at PCI for a number of years, focusing on all of our monitoring, evaluation, research, and now sort of strategic analytics for us. And then Julia Montijo, who's our Director of Operations. So she's also been with us for a number of years, focuses a lot on our cooperative agreement, grant, and contract compliance issues. And so they, along with Carr, who's really been our, Carlin, who's really kept us on track and interacted quite a bit with him. It's been the team that's put this guide together. So I'm just going to get the ball rolling with some open-ended questions, and hopefully we'll have just an informal conversation and discussion. And please jot down, again, all your suggestions and comments. If we don't get to them today, never fear, we will do our best to address them online in some way or send them out by email. We'll figure all that out. But we definitely want this communication, this discussion, this conversation to continue. So, Roy, so, when we met here, I don't know, a month or two ago in that room over there, it was the first time I met you, and, you were pretty excited about this guide. So why? What is this doing for you? How does this help you sleep at night?
Okay, the problem that some of you may be aware of that we have encountered is in the clearance process. And for those of you who have submitted data recently or in the last year, since March of last year, we put a little comment in that we're not clearing anything on that has human subjects. And we have now broken through, and we have actually posted just this morning the first one of the data sets with human subjects that we have not posted for a long time. It's good that we've done that. Now, the issue is, how do we get it cleared? And the answer is that our clearing officials need a clear guide as to what has been done to the data to protect the privacy of the human subjects. And if they don't get that, they're not going to even review the data. And that's what a data management plan is all about. So when I first looked at this guide, I thought, hey, this is what we should have been telling people to do at the beginning. But we weren't smart enough, frankly. And now it's good that we're getting to that point. That's why it's exciting.
So it's going to make your job easier because actually things will happen.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. So Julia and Clara, I'm going to skip over to you guys because I know you've been working together for how many years have you worked together? 10 years you've been working together. But this is really the first time that you've really ever worked together, right? And what was that like? I mean, why did this guy do that, and what is it about that working together that actually is making you kind of excited why you flew 3,000 miles to come out here for this
Well,
event?
Julia runs the operations. I've been working with monetary evaluation of research. You tend to each have their own, territory to work. But around the issue, when this policy came out, and we were like, oh my goodness, and we were like, how are we get one more policy, and how do we really interpret and what we do? We really very quickly realized that this wasn't an M&E issue, and it wasn't a compliance issue. That we actually needed to really work together to try to learn, understand, interpret the policy, and put, protocols, or develop the guidelines for us to be able to develop a stronger data management systems and be able to comply at the same time. So these two units have begun working together very intensively, and we partnered in developing this guide. And we made it through. We're still friends, but it really brought the two units together, which I think it was remarkable. It also really forced us to go back and assess our existing data quality management protocols, tools, guidelines, and identify where the gaps are. Because the issue of compliance to me is compliance that is really at the core of strong data quality management systems. If we have a strong data quality, then compliance becomes a lot easier instead of the other way around. So plan for your system, great, excellent data quality, then compliance is not going to be as difficult instead of the other way around. But anyway, that's...
Yeah, I would just say that when we first saw the policy, as a compliance person, my first initial reaction was, I'm going to have to do all of this. And bringing our M&E team into the conversation was really helpful. We started looking at what our internal policy would be structured to look like, defining roles and responsibilities, and it actually led us through a conversation that we ended up in the beginning at the budget phase. And I think that's a really important opportunity for us to come together to really speak together about what it's going to take to comply with this policy in the very beginning, from the very beginning, to be organized and understand the costs, understand the implications, understand how to better support the field and work with the field to comply with this. Because it actually started with our headquarters office, and then we realized, well, we really need to engage the field and understand how they're working to get that raw data to us, and then be able to work with it to actually submit. So it actually became a really long process, and I'll just say that now we have regular meetings about this, and we've set up some systems where, on a monthly basis, we're checking in to see from the monitoring and evaluation team what has been submitted or what has been developed in terms of assessments, in terms of reports, and that's kind of a trigger because they're so in the day-to-day of what they do, they forget that, a data set was created and used. So that's really been helpful. So it's been nice to have that regular conversation.
So it seems like this has prompted you all to coordinate and collaborate more than ordinarily, and then maybe that can even play into other areas related to program management and data, and even beyond this issue of complying with the policy, right? That's great. I'm going to just insert a couple of questions that are coming in. This one back to Kim, actually. How long did it take to develop the guide?
Well, we first met last September, I think. But we didn't really, the USAID was doing a lot of things on their end, and we kind of wanted to see where they landed. And so I think we really started in earnest in February.
That was another question, actually, which was that the NGO community was told in the fall of 2016 that USAID was rewriting the policy for January 17 release. That didn't occur, freeze on regs, blah, blah. Is the guide based on the original policy and guidance? Do we know what changes were proposed?
So, as I mentioned, the guide, yes, it's based on policy, and it's not based on policy.
But we took a step back.
Right, we took
Definitely.
a step back,
Yeah.
and it's based on everything you would, what you need to do today. There, you may have heard rumors that there's, going to be an online submission tool. It's not that. It is based on what you would need to do today, but then it's also broader, the data management practices, which are really independent of the policy itself.
Well, we made a call that rather than wait until everything got sorted out, we would go ahead and put forward something that we think is useful in the moment,
Right.
knowing that it's going to evolve
Right.
over time.
Right.
Yeah. And then another question was, within an organization, who has to be involved in drafting the guide?
That, in drafting the guide,
Yeah.
this guide,
That's what it says.
well, we were all involved.
So again, M&E,
Yeah.
or, the sort of data side, the compliance side, and then a project manager, basically,
Right.
and then a consultant who can really come in.
Or someone inside could do
And
it.
really, what we did was, as you mentioned, a huge amount of research and just talking to a lot of people. So this didn't come out of our heads at all. I mean,
Right.
just trying to gather what others were thinking and doing. Yeah.
There are several things. One is, for example, we PTI, we didn't have a data management policy. That was something that this forced us to do that. So I will say, is the development of the data management policy for your organization. Two, is the development of protocols for developing data management plans for each of your projects. That's another component. And third, the guide is a resource. You can take this guide and customize it for your particular organization. You can take and use some of the tools, but you don't necessarily need to start from scratch to develop the guide. You can customize. But to me, the critical elements are develop your policy, develop your data management plans, protocols, tools, etc., whatever, and then obviously develop or customize the guide to really illustrate the processes and the steps and the timelines, role responsibilities, etc. So there are several components to it.
And just to add one more thing, the compliance and submission piece is such a small part of this guide. When we realized when we were going into the process that that was really just the end game, but there was so much that needed to happen from the beginning to get there that essentially anything USAID does next in terms of changing things, if you've done everything up to the point of having that data set ready to submit, whatever it is that they come up with and change will be relatively easy. I mean, it's just such a small part of the guide that would need to be changed. And that was a conscious decision when we went into it, not to make it all about just compliance with the policy.
Well, speaking of, this is a sort of a slight twist on that. Is this more about data compliance or data use? So we were talking about data management, but now we're getting at sort of data use. What are the plans for using the data that's submitted? And Alicia, I just wanted to ask you, in terms of interaction and what you know, are there rumblings afoot for ways to go to that next level? And how can we, because that's the end game, right?
Yeah, no, and I just want to say that's one of the things I actually like best about this guide is that it lays out the process in a space that was previously occupied by what we used to call data fairies. So in the process of going from data collection to data use, you've got people on one
Can you
side.
speak up, Alicia? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. It's not really short. Kind of all.
Yeah.
And when you think about the process for data collection and management and use, and then kind of the golden standard of decision making, then you've got.
You might want to stand just because for some reason I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know why.
I spent my entire, I was standing on the side.
Yeah,
so
I'm sorry.
In fact, actually, let me just sit. I spent my entire high school years being told to be quiet, and then my adult years being told to be loud. When you think about the process of data collection through the management, use, and decision-making, there's people on the one side who are really committed technically, methodologically to collecting in really rigorous ways and making sure they're getting what they need, and they know what they're going to do with it. Then on the other end, you have people who are like, I want to use this for analysis. I want to mash new data together and build products. I want to design better programs. There's a million different things people can conceptualize to use the data for. And then in the middle, data fairies. But that's actually where all the mechanical piece that has to happen. And I think this guide does a really great job of laying out, there's a process to that. And if you've never started down this process before, there's a really methodical way you can think it through. You do need a data management plan. I went through this at MCC. Actually, I was there for 9 of its first 10 years. And the fact that you guys publish human subject data today is a huge deal. Y'all, that's enormous. It takes a lot for an agency to get to that mark. And I didn't have really the burden of legacy regulations on top of me when we were doing it. And so I really congrats on that. But I love that, and I think it really opens up a window for us to talk about what are all the things you can do with data, because if you know how it's been managed, you know how it's got to the right place. Now there's a world of different possibilities, whereas before you had to do all that diligence yourself before you could put it through. And I'll sit back down. Actually, let me stay. That's all right.
Just another question. I don't know if this is for Roy or for others, but they're sort of related, which is, what about use of other data repositories other than DDL? Is there guidance out and related, how does this align or relate to other open data policies like Gates? I don't know, in the Gates Foundation, how to handle projects with multiple funders. So we're grappling with different repositories, different guidance, and again, I guess the idea of if you do good data management, that's the foundation, and then maybe it can be tweaked for others. But any thoughts about?
Well, okay, you had really 3 questions.
Sure, you can handle that.
The last one is the easiest.
Okay.
And that was multiple funders of a data set. Our legal office, GC, we call it, has said if $1 of USAID funds goes into the collection of data, that data has to be submitted to the agency.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Other 2.
Then there was the whole idea how we're interacting with other
data policies and other libraries.
Well, we're not really interacting directly with other policies. We probably should be.
That might be another thing that we can do, is gather what are those others and sort of look at them and put them side by side.
I think they're relatively new also.
Right.
USAID was really on the forefront of this.
Yes.
So those have kind of trickled in just recently, and I think it's a really good point in time to go back and look at them and understand how they all connect to each other.
We did meet with MCC at the very beginning to get their experience, and we've talked with other U.S. government agencies, but not with the foundations like Gates, who said even years ago that they were going to get into a situation where they were going to have a policy, but I didn't even realize they had it yet.
They just released it recently. They definitely did.
On the upside, the data doesn't have to want to get along with each other in order to
work
together. So long as you've got this process in place where you know kind of the origins of your data and it's tagged in ways that you can then work inside a standard to use it in correct ways, there can be a more organic evolution between kind of what USAID has in its data library and then what others have, as long as you've got these processes underneath, because then you know you're working with clean data on both sides.
But I think as an NGO, as a practitioner, I will feel more comfortable or confident knowing that these things are being coordinated in some way or another, and that there's some alignment. There's some, they're not at odds with each other or something like that. It's not confusing. So.
Okay, now the third part of the question was other repositories.
Yeah.
And there's 2 parts to this answer. The first part, it's almost embarrassing to admit this. If you post your data on an accepted repository, and we don't really have the definition of accepted, but it's basically something that's not going away, like the Harvard Dataverse, we'll post it and point to the data on that other site. and we can duck our own clearance process by doing that. That's the embarrassing
Don't quote
part.
him, don't quote him.
No, it's the I don't even know if our clearers know that we're doing that. But we have again, this is all, we check everything with our legal officers. They said as long as you go to the Development Data Library page and you click on that and the box comes up that says you are leaving USAID's site, we no longer have liability. So we can do that. And we have posted data sets that are on the Dataverse and genomic data sets that come out of our Bureau of Food Security. There's some big genomic data set. I have no idea what that data is all about. It's not my area of expertise. So in that sense, we are interacting. Now, the OMB regulation for USAID, to the second part of this question, is we only post data on our site that was collected with USAID funds. There is legislation, the draft, I guess, that's sitting on my desk that I read, actually says something that we can post data that is related to our data. But that legislation has not passed yet. So for the moment, we have no real direct link with any other repository, but we probably will get there over time.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Ben, I have a few more questions here, but I want to give the folks online a chance. You have some really juicy ones?
Well, we can decide whether they're juicy, but so I'll put a couple of them. One question from Denise: what is USAID's estimated percentage of project budget that should be allocated for data management? Is this to be folded into M&E costs or listed separately? Let's see. And then one more question I can ask, it's a bit longer. So previously, USAID noted that there may be some clear situations under which an exemption from dataset submission would be warranted. In other words, simply registering the data rather than transmitting it may suffice in some cases. USAID indicated they plan to specify these situations in the revised policy, but exemptions will be extremely limited. For instance, USAID has noted that even if implementing partners receive a bilateral modification with the open data policy language, we should not transmit data sets if this violates our informed consent process or IRB requirements. We are not required to go back and obtain informed consent from respondents to publicly release previously collected data. Does USAID have additional guidance on when exemptions for submission will be warranted? If not, does USAID still have plans to develop this guidance, and when can we expect to see this?
The first part of the question, I have no answer. What percentage of a budget should go for data management? Because there are projects like the Demographic and Health Surveys project that does nothing but data, and then there are projects that do tiny little, little survey to support their intervention, and it's very different.
But each RFA should, they're starting to specify more and more how much percentage they think, project by project.
I used to do a lot of evaluation. I used to get that question, how much money should be put aside for evaluation? And I always used to say, don't, because it has to be integrated into the entire budget. If you set aside a line item that says monitoring and evaluation, everybody says, oh, that's their problem.
But we do work with those line items now for monitoring and evaluation, and that is definitely a guideline for percentage of a budget. Now, what's different with these policies that I found very interesting, and at least through the process of developing the guide, is that we do need to think about budget and the cost of producing good, solid data and ready for compliance. And that is going to require a more detailed exercise at our proposal level to estimate for the cost of those activities. We actually have a very nice tool. I encourage you to look at the costing tool that really goes step by step on the things that you need to consider and budget for it. We have always under budget for this kind of activities, and this is the time where we really need to be more proactive.
How about the juicy part?
Now, okay, this actually ties in the remarks before about Zambia not wanting data on servers other than their own. We did, and the rumors that we were rewriting things. we were going to submit to the complicated rulemaking process the language that will go into the awards. I mean, there's language now, but we did all of the work. We submitted it once to OMB. They sent it back, and we had months more work to do, and we were ready to go. And the new administration came along and said, you can't submit any new regulations unless you remove 2. If you recall that. And so the document is sitting and waiting, and the time will come when we will submit it for public review. It may happen 5 years from now, it may happen next year, I don't know. So that's what happened with that, and it's unfortunate because we really had promised a lot of people that we were going to submit this for the standard government rulemaking process. Now, on this, is the question about that?
Yeah, it's related to the one that you said.
All right.
I had written it down also, but it's this IRB issue, this human subject issue. So in my context, and this has happened to other people too. So the example of what happened on mine, I went through the IRB process for researching from the back and forth with my university here and there. So it took this long process to get the IRB, and this was before I applied for a USAID Norman Borlaug research grant. So I got the IRB, I started my research on a university grant, and then when I got the USAID funds for the second part of my data collection separately, and I only found out later from the PI, because it's the co-PI, I never saw the contract. Later, a year after I closed the study, they said, hey, you have to upload all your data to the DDL. And I said, this is in total violation of the IRB, which are a separate set of federal regulations. And now I'm being asked to put my interview transcript.
So this is the issue of needing exceptions.
Right. So to answer this person's question from online, so are we able to apply for exemptions?
I think that's the question.
And how does that process work? And who should we speak to about that?
Here, you know, there are even on the submission form, if you've looked at it, 6 legitimate legal reasons for not making the data open. And one of them is your relationship with your host country government. This gets to that Zambia issue.
Right.
The way the process is laid out for clearance, the ruling on whether or not the data cannot be released is the last step. And that's a problem. And we are, I think, going to change that. My suggestion has been, when this has come up, and it's not codified or written down in rules yet, is when you have a situation where either an IRB, because I think we'll always defer to an IRB. I say I think because it hasn't come up that often for us to find out, but at least my colleagues all say we will defer to an IRB. And if a government says, and I didn't realize Zambia had this, but it's come up for Tanzania for us, and I've been told it will come up in Rwanda for us. If you know in advance, for example, or post doing the work, just go to your COR and have them go to their RLO if it's a country, or GC if it's in Washington, and write out the exemption. And if you know you're going to have that problem, do it ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I hope we actually build this into whatever rewrite of ADS 579 we said we're going to try to rewrite ADS 579 next year. We're doing the rulemaking this year. You know what happened to that, I already told you. But as long as the legal, because it's the legal officer that rules on whether it's a legally justifiable reason for not opening the data set.
But it's not even country specific, because if you're a U.S. institution, you are mandated to follow U.S. regulations and host country if you're doing national.
Sounds like they are going to be reasonable about exemptions.
So in the meantime, we should wait and see.
No, I mean, he gave
us to talk to the.
Have you submitted your data? Are you one of those?
My advisor's been saying wait and see for the last 2 years. My former advisor.
You know, this was done a long time ago. If you want to, if you have that problem, just don't tell us. I don't know. I didn't hear this.
Okay.
But I think what's important is to follow the process of the documentation and rationale for an exemption. We have gone through that with emergency programs, for example, and we got exemptions. They were reasonable, and so just.
I think they're going to be reasonable.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think this is a really important point and an aha moment when we were developing the guide and even now, is to have the conversation and even build it into the proposal about what you can release and can't release and why. That's the initial conversation, to have it at the beginning rather than at the submission stage.
Right.
And that way, if you started that conversation, at least it's out there. Even if you don't get a response right away, at least it's documented
You're thinking
that,
about it.
you think there's going to be an issue with submitting it.
Okay, back to you.
I'm Karen from NDI, and I want to thank you for this report. I think as an organization that's looking to get its internal house in order, this is a must resource, so a must go to resource. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. Miller, for acknowledging that there is areas for improvement. I think that that's great. But to the point about having a conversation with the AO or the AOR, I think that needs to happen, but it needs to be supplemented with some guidance from perhaps your office or from Washington, so they feel that they have the ability to give waivers. I'm thinking about in other circumstances where, whether it's for marking, where that dialogue, there's space for it to happen, but yet either the AO or the AO or the CO feels reluctant because they feel, well, no, this is a no-go area. We have to collect data, and that's all they want to do is collect the data without taking into consideration organizational, internal policies that maybe will restrict.
It's a recommendation, and I think I read somebody's suggestion, maybe it was yours, that we find a way to make sure that the AORs are oriented as well. That comes from sort of central, because if it's just sort of a cold conversation with them, it's going to be very difficult. So is there a plan for them to be more brought up to speed on these kinds of things?
I'd like to say we have a concrete plan. We know this is one of our biggest problems.
It's on their to-do list.
Decentralization,
Not just for the purpose you're talking about, but the whole clearance process was supposed to be managed by CORs and AORs. And it hasn't worked well. We know it hasn't worked well. There's a form that you don't see, but the AOR, COR is supposed to fill out called the Open Data Privacy Analysis Assessment Form.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our AOR, CORs, AORs in Washington said when he got to that point where he looked at that form, he said, to hell with this, and he didn't touch it until he got an assistant like 8 months later and said, you deal with this. Well, we almost have a revised form that might work, taking out all the questions.
That's the quote for the day. We almost have a rival that might work.
Well, until we try it, I think we'll only have questions in there that an AOR, COR can answer. Whereas the original form had all kinds of things that an AOR, COR can answer.
Yeah.
And that's why and it was very long, and they would look at it and they go, oh my God, maybe it will work, but.
So I'm just glad that you have the intention to find a way, and so that's the most important thing.
But, we've talked about we have to get this into the AOR, COR training.
Correct. I was going to say that the form is one thing,
Integrated.
but it's definitely the AORs or CORs need to be trained. We have made 2 submissions, and through that process, that was the number one, the first challenge we had. The AOR didn't know what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So it is the training of the AOR, COR.
That should be a priority.
Really should
we
be
need
a
to figure out
priority.
how to get that done in a way that gets done.
We're doing it just now as we speak.
Right.
No, we're not really. This is a joke. But at the current AOR, COR training, which is taking place last week and this week,
Oh, really?
my colleague, Scott Thompson, who would have come here, is there, and he's injecting it. I was told by another one of my colleagues who I saw on the street who's in the course,
Very happy
he's
to
injecting it at every turn. But that's not institutionalized yet.
Call him up after this and tell him that that was a big push from this meeting and give them some
No, we're aware of it, but it's hard. You know, the AOR/CORs do everything, and it's very hard to add things.
But I also think that there's kind of a demand side information and a supply side for information. And sometimes, depending on the rate at which an agency can move to standardizing the way it wants to talk about things, if the community starts to standardize the way it talks about things, some of the terminology in this guide
becomes a norm. It becomes the new norm.
Right, then your AOR or COR is having the same kind of conversation with multiple people rather than a fundamentally different one every time they sit down with a new organization. And while it's not like, clearly the community can't write all the requirements, but there's some assistance the community can provide by using some kind of standardized terminology and pointing to certain steps in a process so that the person on the other side knows what to put in the form.
So there's a question here about qualitative data. The document says that qualitative data does not need to be submitted. Please explain.
That's not random.
True.
Is that me again?
I don't know. I mean, yes,
it is.
I'm sorry.
I know it's me.
There's
There's actually one.
Qualitative data is not considered data.
The original policy said we don't want qualitative data. There's the frequently asked question.
Okay, can you say again the URL for that? The FAQ?
www.usaid.gov/data.
Thank you.
And you'll get to the DDL. You'll actually see what it currently looks like. I'm sure we'll get to that before we're done. If not, I'll insert it. I've lost my train. But it says in there, but if you can structure it into a spreadsheet, you can submit it, especially if it goes along with quantitative data that helps explain it. So it's really in your ballpark, so to speak, as a submitter, as to whether you think it will help. It's not required, but it can in some cases be important and relevant.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that point, there's a lot of inconsistent instructions from USAID about that because other data stewards at USAID say, no, qualitative data is not structured, it does not go on the DDL, it goes on the deck. And the deck does not have the capacity really to handle interview transcripts right now. It's not set up in a way, in a user-friendly way. So it's a difficult area right now. And I don't know, maybe in your research with this guide, there's another forum where this is, I would be curious to know. But, as most of us know, in 2011, USAID instituted a new evaluation policy. And part of that evaluation policy, more rigorous data and approaches to evaluation. And they recently released a 5-year review study of how that change in policy has been. So since 2006 to 2007, USAID commissioned 670 evaluations. From 2011 to 2016, that number went up to 1,179. That's a total of 1,800 evaluations, which are predominantly based on qualitative data. So where is that supposed to go?
This is another one of those areas that, and I'm wanting to capture, I wanting to capture some of these areas that we need to do more work on to either demystify, de-confuse. Maybe we need another manual or a guide or another session or something, and I think this is one of them. So we're not going to deal with that right now.
Did you come across any set of people that's trying to answer that
No,
question?
but the current policy only requires the quantitative data. And as Rory said, it leaves it as an optional. If you want to submit coding, that has been done and your qualitative data, because that perhaps is going to inform the interpretation of your data, you are very welcome to submit it. Probably most of us will not be submitted more than they asked us to submit. That is all up for discussion.
But if the goal, if the ultimate aim, going back to Carrie's comments, are to use, share, and use, and the majority, there's a lot of great information in the qualitative, so we need to find a way, other than the deck, which is sort of like a parking lot approach, to really glean from the qualitative data the kind of information that we need to share so that we're all raising improving the state of the art, whatever you want to call
That
it.
is definitely a topic for policy.
Yeah, so I
don't know enough.
so I think that's a follow-up topic. I think there was a couple of others, and one was the issue of maybe adjusting this idea of timely and scale, and it's really sort of relative to the analytic purpose. So was there any other sort of new areas? I think this whole issue of exemptions was another one that I think there could be more clarity and obviously more work. And then the AOR, COR thing was another one. So I was just trying to capture some of these ones that maybe we can move on in the future. So the question back there, let's questions. And then back,
It's a bit on a different topic. I'm just curious, is there a long-term plan to evaluate this policy? How was this data used? And to share that back with the stakeholders, kind of what's the long-term plan for that?
Yeah, and really I don't think that there is a plan, but I think that this issue about, this is somebody else wrote and is related, about the use of all this data that's being uploaded. What's our intention? If our purpose, our goal is to share this data for all the reasons that we've said, then we need to measure that at some point. Is it achieving its intended purpose? And I think it's too early days now to know that, but the question is there a plan? And I think it would be great. I don't know who this master external evaluator would be, but to come in and look at that, at least a reflection, a self-reflection, I think would be good.
The irony of it all is that we're not allowed to know who's using our data.
Really?
That was like silence.
If I can add just from a slightly different sector's perspective. I spent a year at a tech startup, a data reconciliation firm, prior to coming to Interaction. And for most sectors that are thinking about data reconciliation, which have been doing this for years longer than the development and humanitarian communities have, like the health sector, there is so much health data. There are actually only a few standards of health data. So actually reconciling them is less complicated than some of what we're trying to do, because there's only a handful of templates they're going to turn to for it to be verifiable data. Even there, the way you can tell it's being used is people build stuff with it. So you have new patient portals, or you have new medical research, or you have new deliverables come out of it, because there's not like an omniscient being who looks at the health data on the planet and says, value has been created here and here. There's a market that produces it. And I'm not saying we shouldn't try to evaluate. I've got a room full of evaluators. I would never say that. We should always try to evaluate it. But in some ways, we may be holding ourselves, because we are a room full of evaluators, we may be holding ourselves to a standard around how will we know if this is working well that no other sector has ever used to show that it's working well.
We have to use qualitative methods. So, I mean, we just will. We're going to have to see how it's going. Yeah.
To Alicia's point, though, I mean, the U.S. government open data policy requires sort of a cost-benefit analysis, and we're talking about USAID investing in data stewards and all this sort of infrastructure, and organizations taking on, well, what it probably already should. But so if we're not sure there's actually a benefit, then how do we know that these investments, whether or not the data is being used, USAID's purpose is to improve the quality of life of people. So as a repository, they should be able to say, this is the data that's improving people's quality of life, right? So
you should use it for advocacy, that kind of thing, or to...
No, but if you're, the cost benefit, if you don't know who the users are, or if it's even being used, then, it's basically just an information dump. And is that a role that USAID should have? If we have the data and people know that we have this data, aren't we the better sources for the data than a DDL? I guess.
So I think that this is a huge issue and a hugely important issue that sort of gets at the sort of almost philosophical underpinnings of this whole thing. And I would love to have a session on that. We're not going to get into that. I think that we're trying to capture, areas that still need to be attended to, and this is one of them. Not just the, sort of the cost benefit, the return on investment. How do we know what the investment has been, and how do we know what the return is, and at what periodicity, or how and who would be actually responsible or accountable for analyzing that. And then how do we get that information back out to everybody so we all know? And then how do we use that information to actually change what we're doing? If this isn't working, what's the process for changing it to do something else? And is the train on the track so long, and so it's been such a huge, heavy lift to get there that we can't get it off the track? I don't know. So that's a huge, interesting conversation that maybe we can have with the right people. I don't even know who the right people are.
Or what is the long-term plan?
Yes, we are not allowed, if somebody downloads our data, we're not allowed to know who it is. That's federal law.
Right, but you don't have to know who it is to be able to find evidence of its use.
That's
So that's what we have to figure out how to do.
On that point, can you know number of downloads?
Yeah.
But not who they are?
yes, but I'm probably the one downloading the data most.
Just related to, like, would you know the number of downloads, and would you know which data is being downloaded more than, like, which sectors?
Data. I mean,
Yeah.
We can tell, but what we can't distinguish is how much of that is the Bureau of Food Security looking to see how we uploaded their data.
You don't know how they used that. Once they downloaded it, they don't know what they did with it.
Yeah, but data use is not so that you would know which data is, whether you don't know who's using it and for what purpose, but you know by sector which data is more relevant than the other data.
Yeah, there was somebody over here first.
No, I was just wondering.
Can we get in order?
So what I was referring to data is, I was wondering if there's internal coordination at USAID with the other program offices to determine, I mean, we know that health data that's collected is much more rigorous, for example, than governance data. Is there a systematic process in place to get the technical teams involved in reviewing this data, so in future programs we can actually see how some of this information that we're spending a lot of money on is collected and is being used to either adjust the design of different programs or to improve different programs, and then to relay that information back to us through our FAs.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and that's what we hope to have happen, and I think that we will add that to the AOR kind of point, because those folks, the heads of those, that has to trickle down through some senior folks in those other offices, which I'm sure we'll have to figure out a plan for that. But
yes.
It's not happening right now.
It's not happening.
But it's a good idea. Okay.
It is a good idea.
No, a lot of it council's there because what the DDL will hopefully do is create actual quality data, which will result in data use and sort of this virtuous cycle that sort of goes on within that. It's the data use that we're trying to capture. And to what extent, if people are using the data and say a publication comes out, you have to give credit to USAID and the DDL if you publish this. Are there caveats like that? Like conditions for using the data?
There are no conditions for using the data. We do, not on the current platform, but on the one we're building that I said I would bring in somehow. There's a recommendation for how to cite the data.
Okay.
But once it's out there on the DDL, anyone can go. It's a public-facing website and download the data, and that's what it was all about.
I look at like a DHS and measure where you have to write a justification for why you want access to the data. Would it be worthwhile to think about that at all?
And that, I think we discussed that at one of our meetings.
Yeah.
There's a big flap over that because the DHS people said they were not going to put their data on the DDL. And they don't. But they're really in violation of the policy. And they got away with it.
Yeah. Okay, just a couple more in the back, and then Ben, if there's one more or two, because we're about out of time. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering about the issue in terms of obviously getting things into the public forum, that the most common use is through publications, through abstracts, through meetings, and it's a bit of a conflict in some ways once that it goes to the timeliness and embargo times, or for data sets or reports or things that are submitted to be publicly available versus being able to get them. It takes a long time to get journals and submissions and things like that. So what are the considerations, or are there any, in terms of the ability, whether this will make it more difficult to get things into the peer-reviewed literature? I know NIH has very specific rules and relationships with journals. Is USAID addressing that at all in terms of once it's publicly available, it will be difficult to get it in?
And then the second piece went to that issue about using it. There'll be no, if you don't know who's taking it and how, the issue of using it appropriately for getting quality results. People can take data sets and misinterpret it and put out results that are completely wrong based on what the primary data showed. And if people are just out there doing it, how is there a mechanism to ensure that when somebody uses it, that it's actually appropriately used?
I think on the youth side, that's a whole other issue that this policy and this guide is not addressing. It's hugely important. It's what it's all about ultimately. So I think that would be a great session. Yes. I'm looking at Alicia because I think that's an interaction issue big time. So that's great. Your points are well taken. On the issue of how it interacts with sort of publications and whatnot, I mean, I don't know.
There is an embargo. There's an embargo. You can request an embargo. It'll generally be granted if you're planning on publishing data.
I don't see it. I don't think there's a conflict per se. So there was one other one, and then we're going to wrap up.
Okay. A number of NGOs have refrained from uploading data, waiting for USAID to come out with its new policy and regulations, et cetera, and because there was so much uncertainty. Question often comes up in my organization about what would happen during an audit. Are we considered in non-compliance given that since 2014 there's this language that you have to upload all your data? So can you give us some insights? And if we haven't uploaded, do we need to go back to 2014 and upload all those data sets?
I've never been audited in that sense, so I don't know what the auditors would look at, but yes, you're not in compliance. So you should, if you're worried about it and you think that's a real problem,
use the guide.
Inundate us with your data.
Okay, Ben, anything left? We do need to wrap up. I want to keep time.
Sure.
Anything else?
So one question here. 16 years ago, I attended discussions of the move to electronic voter files and was laughed at when the issue of hacking came up. Now that international hacking and cyber attacks are no longer a laughing matter, what protections can USAID and we as implementers provide to partners?
Hire the rest a little bit on security and the guide. I mean, it's not, I don't know how it will affect your elections.
Well, you know, we some of you may have heard us announce that we're going to have a new platform that's a lot better. It doesn't yet meet the security rules. So how do we prevent hacking? 100%, I don't know. But how does anybody? But yes, I agree and have said it in other places where this has come up. We're more likely to be hacked than one NGO because we are a government agency. And our people are really trying hard to force us into security measures that our platform does not, that the one we're designing does not meet. And that's one of the things that's holding it up.
And that really is the importance of us as NGOs to strip the data and not even submit data that we think, you know, if there was a hack that there would be an issue with. So that really comes down to us taking, you know, the onus on ourselves to make sure that data is not shared.
Which is back to Roy's answer to my first question about what makes him happy and allows him to sleep is when the data comes in clean and is all fine and he can go through the review process and then it's perfection. Okay, so thank you. Speaking of perfection, thank you. I want to just make sure if anybody has a sort of last comment, especially we've been capturing, I hope, some ideas for what we need to do next, but you know, where do we go from here? And maybe any last words about today and everybody's attention. I mean, it's been so great to have 101 people online and everybody in the room, and it's overwhelming. The response has been overwhelming to this guide, honestly. So last comments?
I would just say that we didn't put all this effort into this just to have the conversation stop here.
Yeah.
So we really would like to hear from people what they think and what the next steps are so that we can, you know, be an advocate and hopefully continue the conversation and continue to do work on this issue.
I mean, at PCI, you know, we're doing this because we have to do it, number one, but also because we like to be able to share sort of practical application, the grappling with the sort of real life issues with peer organizations. We just like to do that, and we love TOPS small grants for that reason. But the TOPS grant has ended. We don't have resources, but we have intention. And so we would look for, collaborators to help us with that, others that in their spare time, like we do, want to move this forward. Alicia?
I think I would just add some of the questions that people are asking about data use and the tensions between security and open data and value and all of these things. These are the questions kind of our time for this sector.
Absolutely.
And there, on the humanitarian side of the equation, there's also a lot of questions about protection and data storage, and kind of they're encountering from a slightly different angle many of the same things. So if you went to Forum this year, you saw we did a big plenary on it. I think this is probably a conversation we'll come back to again and again, whether it's use side or kind of people start using the guide and there's like, okay, how does this one go? How does that one go?
Everybody here going to be sort of on a list or a mailing list or whatever, so that information comes out about interaction sessions, webinars, et cetera. They can, that would
everybody
great.
signed in.
Yeah, we have it. But we strongly encourage you to use the guide and to really check if you find a better tool, if you test the tool, but you can enhance. This is what keeps a guide like this updated and relevant. So please share, and even as an informal, kind of process, we would really love to continue and keeping it relevant to all of our work.
Since there is an FAQ up on the USAID website, hopefully that can be updated as well, so we can maybe get, I said hopefully.
There is an update sitting in the chief data officer's inbox.
Okay, exactly. Well, just let us know. I mean, because there are a lot of questions, but there are answers, and we need to share those so that we can minimize the confusion and maximize our forward movement, right? So.
Right. Last word.
Well, thank you all for being interested.
Thank you so much for the interaction. Thank you, USAID. No, you've been a sport.
I should say, though, I'm not the patron. I didn't pay for this.
No, you did not.
This is a freebie.
But I really appreciated how much Roy has been very practical and very collaborative about this, and not defensive, but actually very forward-thinking, is what he's done, and honest and transparent about the challenges he's facing. So, thank you. We will answer the question somehow, some way. Online.
All right.